Well, hello and welcome back to yet another episode of the Third Man's Cricket Show. I am Parth Rathor, and today I'll be talking about David, the Killer Miller. हम जब भी डेविड मिलर का नाम लेते हैं सबसे पहले हमारे दिमाग में वो एक इनिंग्स याद आती है डेविड मिलर की his 101 run knock which he had against the Royal Challengers Bangalore dating back to 2013 where he rescued his team, his Kings 11 Punjab out of nowhere and won the game for Punjab in the very last over, and it still remains one of the best matches in the IPL so far. We've had a wonderful IPL, wonderful 15 years of IPL, but मिलर का नाम सुनते ही मिलर हैज बीन प्लेइंग आईपीएल फॉर सो लॉन्ग एंड मिलर का नाम सुनते हमेशा वो एक इनिंग्स दिमाग में आती है एंड आई एम वेरी श्योर दैट so many people would have become Miller fans or Punjab fans after that knock of David Miller. And let's talk about David Miller today because 2013 में जब David Miller ने वो सेंचुरी मारी थी, he had a wonderful season. He scored somewhere around 400 plus runs in that season. I think 418 runs to be very precise. Coming back next year 2014 में he bettered himself और जाके उन्होंने 446 runs मारे. But after 2014 we saw a dip in David Miller's form. In 2015 he had 357 runs and उसके बाद he was barely touching the 150 run mark, and there were a couple of seasons where David Miller didn't even score 100 runs in the entire season of the IPL, and we just saw a dip इन डेविड मिलर्स फॉर्म. जो हम डेविड मिलर को बुलाते हैं, हम उन्हें किलर मिलर के नाम से जो जानते हैं, वो किलर मिलर वाला फंडा आ नहीं रहा था डेविड मिलर की बैटिंग में. ऑफ कोर्स डेविड मिलर इज अ वंडरफुल फील्डर एंड हिज फील्डिंग वाज स्टिल इंटैक्ट. ही डजंट बॉल एनीवेज, बट he's a wonderful fielder. If I'm not wrong, David Miller is the only player who has won a Man of the Match award in an international game just for his fielding. I think this happened in I think 2018 or 19 में हुआ था ये, जब साउथ अफ्रीका मैच जीती थी और वो मैच में मैन ऑफ द मैच डेविड मिलर को दिया गया था जस्ट फॉर हिज फील्डिंग. ही हैड अ फ्यू कैचेस, अ कपल ऑफ रन आउट्स एंड वंडरफुल डिस्प्ले ऑफ फील्डिंग. सो डेविड मिलर बहुत ही बेहतरीन फील्डर है. बट बात जब आती है उनकी बैटिंग की, वी कॉल हिम किलर मिलर बिकॉज ऑफ द वे ही बैट्स. डेविड मिलर उस दर्जे की बल्लेबाजी नहीं कर रहे थे. इंटरनेशनली अगर आप डेविड मिलर का फॉर्म देखें तो ही हैज बीन little bit on off on off. Like if I only consider T20 internationals over here, the match which happened recently, the first T20I between India and South Africa, where South Africa managed to have the most successful run chase courtesy of marvelous partnership between David the Killer Miller and his partner Rassie van der Dusen. David Miller became the second player in the history of T20 international cricket to score 100 plus boundaries in the death overs. MS Dhoni has 104 boundaries, fours and sixes included, in the death overs in T20 internationals. David Miller has 101, just three boundaries shy of MS Dhoni. And MS Dhoni, we know MS Dhoni as the mega finisher, the mighty finisher. धोनी के बारे में हम जितना बोले उतना कम है वैसे. But coming to the main focus, the main man of the hour, David Miller. So David Miller जो है, his international stats have been decent, but main concern over here is IPL stats. Because अब IPL देखो, IPL is a place where the big bucks come in. IPL में you want the best of the best player in your team. You have such a huge budget cap on your name, and you bid so hard on players. We saw recently players like Harshil Patel got sold for 10 crores. Avesh Khan got sold for over 10 crores. Ishan Kishan got sold for over 15 crores. So people do watch your national game, your domestic matches or international matches very closely जब बात आती है आईपीएल के स्टैट्स को लेके. एंड मैं आपको बता दूं 2014 के बाद से लेके 2020 तक डेविड मिलर का स्टैट्स, डेविड मिलर स्टैट्स, आई जस्ट ब्रीफ स्टैट्स. he scored runs at an average of only 23.5 across 7 seasons. Across 7 seasons, his overall average was only 23.5 runs and at a strike rate of 102.3, which means he's scoring 23.5 runs at almost run a ball. And looking at today's T20 standards where runs kaise bhi aa rahe hain, we saw in the IPL we had massive 200 plus games. Even the recent T20 जो अभी हुई इंडिया और साउथ अफ्रीका के बीच में, जिसमें साउथ अफ्रीका ने शिखर हासिल की, even there we saw 212 runs का target got chased down so easily by South African batters. And ऐसे era, in such an era of T20 cricket, where someone who has 100 plus boundaries in international cricket, in death overs, in T20 in death overs, is scoring at an average of 23.5 runs, just at a strike rate of 102.3. That's a very concerning stat to have by your name. But here comes David Miller in 2022, where he scores 481 runs at an average of 68.71 with a strike rate, a mega strike rate of 142.73. These are huge numbers, and this is what regarded in Gujarat Titans victory. Now, David Miller, if you guys know, David Miller has his name to the fastest T20I century, joint fastest T20I century, which is a 35 ball 100. I'm sorry, 35 ball century shared both by David Miller and Rohit Sharma. Of course, Rohit Sharma hit it against South Africa. I think David Miller scored that century in 2017. But let me take you to David Miller's international stats. In 2016, David Miller in T20 internationals scored. He had a decent year. He scored at an average of 35.4. Back 2017, just because of that century, his average is 30.3. If you remove that century, David Miller didn't have that great a season in 2017. 2018, again a very bad season for Miller, scoring at an average of only 20.1. Then he had a good 2019 where he had a couple of 50s, had good games. 2019 where he averaged 39, but then comes 2020, COVID struck, and he averaged only 24 runs. But then comes the mega year 2021, जहाँ पे आप वर्ल्ड कप खेले हो, जहाँ पे आपने बहुत every team has played over 10 to 12 T20 international games, I presume. And over there, David Miller scores at an average of 47.125 at a strike rate of 141.5, if I'm not wrong. I think he scored around at a strike rate of 141.5. You just see the transition over here, because his overall stats, if I just the average which David Miller had from 2016 to 2020 was 29.76, just short of 30. And then you come in 2021 where your team is playing the World Cup and you average 47.125. That's a huge margin. 47.125 and 29.76, बहुत बड़ा गैप होता है. To better yourself by that much in 1 year is a huge thing, and David Miller surely has worked a lot on his game. And here's one stat, one very interesting thing जो मैं आपको इधर बताता हूँ. So basically David Miller middle order batsman है. He comes to bat in the middle order. So David Miller का strike rate against fast bowlers has always been over 145. ओवरऑल करियर आईपीएल में भी आप देखो, ओवरऑल आईपीएल only 2021 where he had his best season. International cricket, his I think his strike rate against pace bowlers is 150 plus, and आईपीएल में इस अराउंड 145 147 के आसपास की उनकी स्ट्राइक रेट है फास्ट बॉलर के सामने. बट हियर इज वेयर द स्पिनर्स कम इनटू प्ले. सो डेविड मिलर एक मिडिल ऑर्डर बैटर है. सो मिडिल ऑर्डर बैटर यूजुअली कम्स टू बैट अराउंड इन द मिडिल ओवर्स, जहां पे स्पिन डोमिनेंट ओवर्स ज्यादा है, जहां पे विकेट स्लो हो जाती है, आपके रन्स ज्यादा जल्दी नहीं आते. In international cricket, David Miller's strike rate against spinners is 125.76. In IPL, David Miller's strike rate against spinners is 125.73. But when you look at 2021 and 2022, David Miller's strike rate against spin is 141.02. This is where David Miller has made his edge in his. This is why you see such a huge difference between the stats. And if you go look at the past records of David Miller, most of the times where David Miller has lost his wickets has been against a spinner. More so, yeah, has been against a spinner. And David Miller एक lefty batter है, ठीक है. David Miller is a left hand batter, and he has often lost his wickets to spinners. But this is one area where David Miller has worked so hard. That is the reason we've seen David Miller, the batter, rise again. David Miller, the finisher, rise again. And at this moment, David Miller is proving himself to be a very huge threat for any opposition lined up against him. And this might as well be the rebirth of David Miller. 100 plus boundaries in international cricket in T20s in death overs is no joke. Having an IPL season with an average of 68.71 is no joke. And this is the new David Miller जो हम आज देख रहे हैं. And we all hope that this David Miller keeps on shining. This David Miller keeps on rising, because we love the Killer Miller. Any South African player, you can't hate any South African player. South Africa has had stalwarts, and David Miller might just be the next one. And he might just add himself into the golden books of South African cricket in the near future if he continues his form like this. And we all hope all the best to David Miller for his upcoming future. Thank you, guys.